Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen tells her friends that her husband is lazy and really ends up regretting it. My Karen wife lies to her friends about me being lazy, so I called her out. My wife, who's 41, and I, 42 male, have been married for 15 years. Apparently, she was surprised by how capable I am of handling household chores and tasks, which I didn't think much of. My mom always had me help out with chores when I was a kid, so it's never been something I felt was beneath me. I do think I inherited my mom's need to clean excessively though. It's so bad that I can't even eat unless a mess is dealt with. My mom is an amazing cook, my aunt was a chef at a fancy hotel, and my dad loved having barbecues, so it felt natural to learn from them and pick up a thing or two in the kitchen. The only thing I didn't master was making a decent cup of tea or coffee. I'm genuinely awful at that. Eventually, I took on most of the household chores and cooking, which I prefer anyway since she usually comes home exhausted. Recently, I started asking our kids, who are 11 and 9, to do some minor tasks around the house to teach them responsibility. My wife has a group of friends who hang out regularly, and this time, it was her turn to host them at our place. I offered to take the kids out for the day, and everything was set. Before we left, I had some work to finish, and since my office is right next to the living room, I could overhear their conversation. One of her friends asked how she managed to keep the house so spotless, and my wife proudly claimed she was the one responsible for all of it. The conversation then shifted to their common gripes about their spouses, especially how unhelpful they found them to be. I started feeling uncomfortable, so I left the office and took the kids out. When I came back after her friends had left, I acted normal until we went to our bedroom. I asked her about the conversation, pointing out that I do most of the cooking and cleaning in our marriage. She told me not to take it personally, she just wanted to fit in with her friend's struggles. Now I feel unappreciated, especially since I don't remember her genuinely expressing any gratitude for what I do. Since then, she's been short with me and says I'm weaponizing what I do against her and holding it over her head. That was never my intention, and I didn't want to make her feel guilty at all. I don't expect constant compliments or for her to defend me all the time, just a simple, "My husband is actually pretty helpful. He does his share," would have been nice. I can't help but feel like her friends now see me as some deadbeat who comes home and just relaxes while she does all the work. Update. I tried my best to talk to my wife yesterday. I just can't believe that this is the woman I married. I approached her, explaining that while it wasn't a huge deal, it still wasn't a kind thing to do. She didn't appreciate me bringing it up again, saying I should just suck it up and stop complaining about one mistake. She apologized, but her tone made it clear that she was just tired of dealing with it. I could see her getting heated and about to start an argument, so I changed the topic and asked if we could adjust our household responsibilities to make things more fair. Currently, I handle almost everything, cooking, cleaning, and even planning date nights or vacations. I mentioned it felt like she comes home, says she's tired, and leaves the rest to me. At this, she got up in my face, telling me I had no right to lecture her about chores when I'm practically at home most of the time. She refused to hear me out, saying that what we have works best for our situation and that she's the breadwinner, which balances everything out. Even this morning, she was in a bad mood, coming downstairs looking annoyed. I'm sure our kids noticed it too, but I drove them to school after they got ready. When I got back, I noticed that my wife had left her packed lunch on the kitchen counter. So now I'm sitting here, feeling like the woman I've known for 15 years can't stand me. She's been ignoring my texts and calls. I guess I'll have to bring this up seriously, even if it makes her angry. I can't let her keep acting like this, especially in front of our kids. Not the jerk. My wife gets these conversations and just bows out, saying she doesn't have these problems and we split chores equally. It's not hard to do. Then she commiserates with me about other people's very strange life decisions. If her friends were talking about cheating, would she be trying to fit in there too? Group discussions are one of the quickest ways to ruin your marriage. My wife and I had a serious conversation about this back in 2020. I sensed the animosity she was building towards me, and once I saw the discussion she'd been having with her online friends, it all made sense. All they did was complain about their husbands, and she got sucked into doing the same thing. Even though I work full-time, she's a stay-at-home mom, and I do 50% of the house chores. I told her straight up that she had to make a choice. Either she was going to focus on our relationship and stay off that site for good, or stay on that site with all those angry people complaining about their husbands, but I wouldn't stick around for it. I'm happy to say that she realized how right I was. She deleted her account on there that day and hasn't been back on it since. And surprise, surprise, we've both been much happier since then. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend he shouldn't take his girl best friend for couple's costume for Halloween? My boyfriend, 26 male, and I, 23 female, have been together for 8 months. He's very kind to me and has never raised his voice or lost his temper with me. Early in our relationship, he introduced me to his friends and I get along with them just fine. He and his friends have been close since nursery school and they've all been very welcoming. Among his friends, there's Vivian, fake name, who, along with 2 others, plans for Halloween every year months in advance. I've never doubted anything inappropriate and I never wanted to be the jealous new girlfriend who disrupts friendships. The issue is, my boyfriend's firm hosts Halloween parties every year, and he usually attends with one of his friends. This year, it's Vivian's turn, as last year he went with his friend Tom. He and Viv share a passion for scary costumes and horror, and they bond over Halloween. I love Halloween too, which he knows, and I thought we shared that common interest. I get that I can't claim it as our thing, but he didn't even ask if I wanted to go with him, especially since he and Viv began planning 2 months ago, while we were already dating. I guess I thought he might have at least asked. 2 days ago, he mentioned that he and Viv had their couple's costumes ready and asked if I wanted to see them. I didn't feel as excited about it as I should have, and he must have noticed because he asked me what was wrong. So I told him it hurt that he hadn't even asked me to go with him once. He didn't get angry, but said he wouldn't change his rituals with his friends for his relationship, adding that he had told me about this early on. I felt hurt and told him that was a harsh thing to say. He didn't respond and has been giving me the silent treatment ever since. I've never expected him to drop plans with his friends for me. I don't mind when he does escape rooms with Viv or hiking trips with Tom and the others. The only reason I thought he might have asked me was because Halloween is a shared interest. Now I feel like I crossed a line and I just feel awful. Am I the jerk? Update. He apologized and we broke up. I didn't want to, and it certainly wasn't just because he could have asked me to Halloween, but he said he realized he wasn't someone who could give me the attention and care I deserved and that Vivian deserved better. I asked him if there was something going on between him and Viv, and believe it or not, he admitted he's in love with her. Some of the people who messaged me were right. Apparently, Vivian doesn't know, and while I was crying, feeling on the verge of a panic attack, he was explaining their long history and how he was too much of a coward to tell her. Well, I guess that makes 2 of us, because I was too scared to ask if he actually liked me. I'm a mess. I took sick leave this week, and luckily my professors were understanding. I keep feeling like it's my fault. I didn't even want him to skip going with Viv. All I did was ask why he hadn't thought of taking me along now that we'd been dating for almost a year. I know it wasn't my fault and that this was ultimately for the best, but I can't stop blaming myself for speaking up. My friends are telling me to see a therapist, but with grad school and feeling like a wreck, I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to yell at him for wasting my time and hurting my feelings, even though he cried, apologized, and kept saying I deserved better. I know I do. I feel like Vivian won, even though she doesn't know. And I have no right to be angry with her because it's all on my ex. Some people want to have their cake but eat it too. He wants to be with his friend, but he's too scared to actually tell her and face rejection. So he's living a delusion where he just needs to wait a little longer for her to realize she loves him. And in the meantime, he has OP for all the girlfriend duties necessary. My boyfriend wants to move in together, but after we went on a trip together, I don't want to. How do I tell him? We've been together for a year, but have only spent 1 or 2 nights continuously because of our busy schedules. My boyfriend wants me to move in with him as soon as possible, and I told him I would in a few months. However, we went on a trip recently, and I saw a different side of him that I really don't like. My boyfriend has this hurtful habit of making offensive jokes, specifically about my appearance. I feel bad even mentioning this, but he's in no position to make comments about anyone's appearance. He's overweight, but I don't care, and I've never once mentioned it. During the trip, he started making jokes about my arms, calling them massive and saying they looked like Popeyes when I was getting ready for dinner. I got upset and started to cry. I felt so insecure. I'm very fit and muscular, and I'm always a bit self-conscious about looking masculine, so it's a sensitive area for me. When he saw that I was crying, he walked out of the hotel room, slammed the door, and said, "When you're ready, I'll be downstairs." Later, we had a conversation where he told me he was upset that I was upset. He said I can't take a joke, and he's sick of having to watch everything he says around me. In the end, he promised he wouldn't comment negatively on my appearance anymore. But just 2 hours later, while we were looking at photos, he said, "Wow, your makeup was actually messed up today." I was also really bothered by his behavior on the flight back home. It was only a 5-hour flight, but he kept ordering food and leaving a mess everywhere. He left his AirPods in his suitcase in the overhead locker and expected me to get up and retrieve them for him, even though he wasn't entirely sure they were in there. When I said I didn't feel like waking up the guy next to me to scramble around looking for his AirPods, he rolled his eyes and turned his back to me. Here's the real kicker. The flight attendant was giving clear instructions to please buckle seatbelts and turn phones to airplane mode, but my boyfriend was blatantly ignoring her, trying to upload selfies on Instagram. I asked him if he could please listen to her, and he completely flipped out, saying, "Why do you have to tick me off all the time? You're not my mother. I'll do whatever I please. Don't tell me what to do." I was so embarrassed that he said this in public, so I snapped back, saying, "Well, stop acting like a child then." He responded by saying, "No, you are the child. You don't know anything." I just closed my eyes and tried to nap, holding back tears at this point. 10 minutes later, he tried to hold my hand and told me, "You know I love you. I'll always love you. My heart belongs to you." Throughout the trip, it felt like everything was about what he wanted. On one of the days, I suggested we do our own thing and he agreed. We were only apart for 8 hours, but he called me a few times, asking what I was doing. When we met up again, he told me he missed me, was worried about me, and had been thinking about me the whole time. For me, it was the complete opposite. Without him, I felt peaceful. Despite all of this, my boyfriend is always kissing and cuddling me, telling me he loves me. When I went home after we got back, he said he felt so sad going home without me and wished we lived together. But his behavior on this trip turned me off of him completely. How do I tell him that I don't want to move in? I know he'll be hurt, and I don't want to cause him pain, but I just don't see this working out. You should be breaking up with him, not worried about how to tell him you don't want to live with him. Am I the jerk for not pushing my wife to have a bigger role in my daughter's wedding? My ex and I weren't together very long when we had our daughter, Riley. We broke up while my ex was still pregnant, and about a year and a half later, my ex married her husband, Philip. Riley would stay with me every Tuesday and then every other weekend, with holidays split between us. Since she spent most of her time living with her mom and Philip, he became a father figure to her. She doesn't call him dad, but she has made it clear she sees herself as having two dads. I've never felt threatened by Philip, and I have a lot of respect for him. He, my ex, and I have a good co-parenting relationship. I married my wife when Riley was 13. Riley and my wife get along, but they're not as close as Riley is with Philip. I know my daughter doesn't see my wife as a mother figure, and I was okay with that, given Philip's long-standing presence in her life. Riley has always been polite and considerate towards my wife, and while I could tell my wife felt a bit hurt they weren't closer, I didn't want to force anything. My wife and I also have a son together. Now, Riley is in her mid-20s and is getting married. I'm walking her down the aisle with Philip on her other arm. My son is going to be a junior groomsman. My ex will be escorted by her father, and Riley's siblings from her mom's side are also in the wedding party. When my wife asked Riley about her role in the wedding, my daughter told her she would sit up front and be included in family photos. My wife asked if she'd wear a special dress, and Riley said they could shop together, but that she could wear whatever she wanted and didn't need to match the bridal party. My wife is deeply hurt and wants a larger role in the wedding. She suggested walking our son down the aisle, but Riley had already decided that he would walk with her sister from her mom's side, who's close in age with him and is a junior bridesmaid. My wife kept proposing different ways she could participate, but Riley gently declined. I wasn't present for this conversation, and I only learned about it afterward. My wife then came to me and asked me to convince Riley to give her a special role in the wedding. I told her that it's Riley's day, and I'm not going to push her to assign specific roles. I mentioned that she'll have the opportunity to do mother of the groom duties if and when our son decides to get married. My wife pointed out that Philip has a prominent role, including a dance with Riley during the wedding. We'll be splitting the dance song, with each of us sharing half. I reminded her that Philip has been part of Riley's life since she was 10 months old and helped raise her. They simply don't share that kind of bond. My wife is now very upset with me and says I'm enabling my daughter by excluding her. I really don't feel this is my place. Am I the jerk for not pushing the matter more? Not the jerk. Your wife is acting very childishly. I understand that her feelings are hurt, but she needs to understand that you can't force people to feel a certain way about you. Trying to force them to perform like they do only further harms your relationship. Her wedding is not about your wife. She'll just need to accept that. Not the jerk. And props to you for being so cool with your daughter wanting to include Philip to such a degree. I have to say that as a recent bride, I don't forget the people who made my wedding planning more stressful, and I remember the ones who were supportive of my choices. Your wife will likely never get the relationship she wants with Riley if she tries to push these issues at her wedding. Info. Who's paying for this wedding, and are any of yours and your wife's joint funds being used for the wedding and gifts? None of that matters to the question OP asked. Not the jerk on the question about pushing your daughter on this. However, Riley and her stepmother don't have a close relationship. Fine. That doesn't mean your wife is a big nothing. She's been in Riley's life for a decade, and she's the mother of Riley's half-brother. Seems like there were compromises to be had here, so your wife didn't feel completely excluded, but Riley isn't open to anything. Not nice. Am I the jerk for not stepping up to take my stepdaughter to the fun day at her art class? I, 34 female, married my husband, 37 male, 9 years ago. He has a 12-year-old daughter from a previous relationship with his ex, who's 36. They were no longer together when he and I met, so I wasn't the other woman. When we first started dating and got married, my husband's ex and I got along okay. We weren't close friends, but we could exchange pleasantries, talk about pickups and drop-offs, and greet each other on the street without any tension. Things changed when my stepdaughter's mom was left at the altar. She had been with her ex-fiancé as long as, if not longer than, my husband and I had been together. After the breakup, her attitude toward me completely shifted. She became much more possessive of my stepdaughter and hostile towards me. Once, she even told me it made her sick to watch me be a part of her kid's life, seeing her grow up and having a good relationship with her. She said it wasn't fair, especially since my husband and I were growing our family while she was left alone with only her daughter. I tried to be understanding, but she didn't want to hear it. Her hostility affected my relationship with my stepdaughter. Suddenly, my stepdaughter didn't want to spend time with me, wouldn't show me affection, and started acting a little rude when we were together. My husband always talked to her and corrected her behavior, but it was clear there was now a wall between us. He spoke with his ex about it, but she told him it wasn't her problem if our relationship was deteriorating and that it was only fair she got to keep that bond with her daughter. We tried court and therapy, but nothing seemed to help. It didn't get so bad that we couldn't all be in the same house, but one-on-one time became impossible. Family outings were tricky because my stepdaughter didn't want to walk next to me or sit near me. Recently, she admitted that her mom doesn't want us to be close and that she feels like she can't be nice to me or bond with me because it would upset her mom. She even said she wouldn't admit this to a judge or therapist because she doesn't want to be separated from her mom. I felt terrible for her. I assured her I'd never force a relationship, and she just shrugged it off before ending the conversation. Now on to the current issue. My stepdaughter's art class is holding a fun day that requires a family member to attend. My husband and her mom are both unavailable, so naturally I offered. However, she doesn't want me to be there, and my in-laws are unhappy that I decided not to attend. They feel I should go to show my willingness to be involved in her life, arguing that letting her mom's influence keep me away only widens the gap between us. My husband told them to stop pressuring me and said he supports my decision, but my in-laws still think I'm letting her mom win and missing a chance to build a bridge. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your stepdaughter has already said she doesn't want to be around you. You're respecting her wishes. This whole thing is just insane. They don't get to play this game of, oh, it's okay this time, but not any other time. I would tell both stepdaughter and her mother, if they want you to sub in, then you want the whole enchilada, not just to be some prop they can take down from the shelf whenever they want to. The whole idea that you need to do whatever is necessary is absurd. This is either a proper relationship or not. There is no in between. Stand your ground on this. Not the jerk. You have a complicated situation that the ex has created. Your stepdaughter is old enough to know the consequences of her choices. She can either ask you to go or she can miss it. It's her call. I'm really sorry you have all been forced into this by the ex's insecurities and emotional issues, and that she's manipulating her daughter. But I respect that you're trying to respect the stepdaughter's boundaries. She can't have it all if she doesn't wish you to have a larger role in her life. I hope the mother comes to her senses. Karen's cheating gets exposed, now she's blaming me. I, 34 female, have been married to my husband, who's 35, for almost a year now, and we dated for 3 years before that. Ever since we started dating, whenever we go out without the other one, we both let each other know where we are and when we arrive and leave as a safety thing. Example, hey, I just got to the bar. Everything's fine. Or I'm leaving the bar in an Uber and I should be home in 10 minutes. Now this weekend, I went out with my friend Amy, not her real name. We went to a restaurant and to dance. Around 2 a.m., we decided to go home, and because we live in opposite directions, we each took a different Uber. As usual, I texted my husband to let him know I was going home, and he told me that he was also leaving his friend's house and we should arrive at the same time. I knew he was out with some of his friends that included Amy's fiancé as well, as we've all known each other for a long time. But I wasn't really thinking about that, just following my routine. We both got home, I texted Amy to let her know I was home safe, and I went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I had tons of messages and a few missed calls from Amy. My husband also had messages and calls from Amy's fiancé. In her text, she was asking me what I had told her fiancé. What had my husband told her fiancé? How dare we meddle in their relationship, etc. The texts on my husband's phone were just asking if I had arrived home and if he had any idea where Amy was. I called Amy, and again, she asked me what I had told her fiancé. I told her I hadn't spoke with him, and she lost it on me, because if I didn't speak with him, then how did he know that I had left at 2 a.m.? I explained to her that I had texted my husband as I always do. She said I'm a jerk for not telling her that I was doing that, and that my husband is controlling for making me text him, and for telling her fiancé that she was also leaving. Then she hung up and hasn't picked up again. My husband said he only told his friends that we were leaving because he wanted to arrive at home at the same time as me, and that if my friend did something wrong, I don't know what, that's on her, not me. The thing is, this has reached my other friends, and some are saying that I should text my husband when I arrive home, not when I leave the club, and that I'm a jerk for not telling Amy what I was texting my husband. Some agree with my husband and say this is on Amy for lying. She told her fiancé that we both stayed dancing later, and not on me for texting my husband. Honestly, I don't know what to think, as I feel like maybe I should just text my husband arriving home instead to avoid compromising others or to avoid creating an imaginary curfew for my friends. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Update. I haven't heard Amy's version of what happened during that hour and a half that she was missing, but her fiancé told my husband that everything is fine and the reason that she was late was because she decided to walk home while smoking and didn't want him to know and be disappointed that she's smoking again. As of the wedding, so far that's still happening, but I'm no longer part of the bridal party as Amy considers me no longer part of her trust circle. I'm still invited to the wedding, but as my husband's +1 because he's still part of the groomsmen. I'm glad I'm not a bridesmaid anymore, and I'm not sure if I'll be comfortable going to the wedding, because Amy and most of her bridesmaids act as if I was trash-talking her to her fiancé when I haven't even spoken to him. I'm sorry to break it to you, OP, but the reality is, she's still upset because she had something major to hide and smoking isn't it. You know it, all of Reddit knows it, and I'm sure deep down her future husband knows it, but he's too deep in denial. Just as long as your husband doesn't start defending her, I just sit back and wait for the inevitable implosion of their marriage. OP. I personally think it's not my place to assume what Amy did or didn't do in her spare time. I keep my side of the street clean, and it's up to her to keep hers. And as for my husband, he's not particularly close to Amy. He just wants to be able to support her friend when he needs it. Update 2. I've heard all of this from my husband and a few friends I still have in common with Amy and Amy's sister, who's very angry at her. Turns out that, as many had assumed, Amy wasn't being faithful. This past weekend, she went dancing with some friends and didn't come home until 5 a.m. Of course, she told her ex-fiancé that she had been out with her friends all the time, and that's why she didn't answer her phone. Only for him to tell her that because she wasn't home and wasn't picking up the phone, around 2:30 a.m., he called one of her friends to ask to speak to her. And lo and behold, the friend had no idea where Amy was, because they had gone dancing all right, but Amy canceled on them and didn't go. So she insisted that she was dancing with her sister and her sister's friends, but instead she was doing something else. He called Amy's sister to ask her, at what time did Amy leave the club to come home, because he remembered that Amy went dancing with me. And the sister said she hadn't seen Amy either. So he finally confronted her, and after more excuses, she admitted that she was with a work friend. At first, she said it was just a friend that she didn't mention because it's a guy and her fiancé would be jealous. But after more fighting and circling, she told him that it was just a bit of pre-wedding fun, nothing serious, and that it wasn't cheating because they didn't actually hook up and it was only flirting and hanging out, alone at his apartment. So he called off the wedding because he doesn't approve of this kind of pre-wedding fun. He's staying with some friends, and she's calling everyone she can think of to ask us to talk to him to get the wedding back on. I don't get why some people treat the run-up to their wedding as their last chance to go wild and act single. The last chance was before you agreed to be in a committed relationship. Yes, even before you were engaged. If you're already cheating, you won't magically stop because you got a ring on your finger. You'll just find new ways to justify it. Having some pre-golden anniversary fun. If you expect someone to be an alibi for your cheating, it's up to you to make sure they know that and agree to it. Amy's a jerk. As a woman myself, I always laugh when these girlfriends or wives go out to bars and clubs without their man, then dude acts surprised when he gets cheated on. Your girl is not going there to just hang out with her friends. She's looking for something on the side, and everyone knows that, they just don't like to admit it. My husband and I decided early on that we weren't going to have any of that in our relationship, and now we're going on 10 years of a happy marriage. Y'all need Jesus. Am I the jerk for telling my vegan sister that she can't serve only vegan food at our family reunion? Every year, our family has a reunion where different members host. This year, it's my younger sister's turn. She's been vegan for about 3 years and is quite passionate about it. We all respect her choices, and we make sure there's a good variety of vegan options whenever we have family gatherings. When she's announced that she'll be hosting, she also said that the entire menu would be vegan to align with her beliefs and that it's a chance for the family to try something different. Some family members were excited, but others, including many of the older folks, were pretty upset and felt like they were being forced into her lifestyle, even if just for one meal. I spoke to her privately and asked if she'd be open to including a few non-vegan dishes for those of us who aren't keen on a full vegan menu. She got quite defensive, saying that this was her chance to showcase veganism and that for one meal, everyone can let it go. I respect her beliefs, but I also think that forcing an entire family to adopt her choices, even if just for one meal, isn't fair. She's now upset with me for not being supportive and says I'm not respecting her choices. Am I the jerk? Update. I thought I'd answer a couple of questions. 1. There is no set rotation. The hosting goes to whoever wants to host or hasn't hosted before. In this case, she wanted to host. We have managed to come to a compromise where people can bring their own food as long as it doesn't contain meat, which I think is fair. And just for some more context, she works at a well-known UK fast food place, so she has no issues handling or preparing or serving meat, although I get that this can be different at home. You're the jerk. I get it's not what you usually look forward to or are used to with meals, but it's one meal. I grew up with 2 vegetarian friends, their whole family, and when they had me over, even as a kid, I knew I shouldn't expect or ask for meat. You say you respect her beliefs, but want her to go against them for you all in her own home. Veganism is based on a strongly held personal belief related to their morals, and in that way, it's similar to a religion. There's still tons of variety and delicious options with vegan food. So much. Be more open-minded to something different for one meal. If you really expect to just completely hate any meal with no animal products, smash a burger beforehand and politely pick at whatever looks best when you're there. I get you, but she's accommodated at everyone else's house. She has no interest in reciprocating that courtesy. She too can smash a vegan meal beforehand and just pick at whatever looks okay for her when she's visiting. No? It goes both ways. Also, she's not being a great host in that you want your guests to be comfortable. All the rules that would apply to her being taken care of at other people's houses apply to her hosting as well. Finally, she's using the meal to showcase veganism. So it's part reunion party, part evangelizing. Neat. Everyone sucks here. They should all be more flexible. You're the jerk. It's one meal, and she'll be serving food that everyone can eat, and it's perfectly possible for her to be an amazing host without catering to people's preference for meat dishes. If a friend whose religion forbids pork invites me to their place for breakfast, the fact there's no bacon with my pancakes isn't forcing their beliefs on me. But if I ask them to provide bacon because it's my preference, I'd for sure be disrespecting their beliefs. I agree. She hosts, she cooks, so she decides the menu. Others don't get a say in the menu unless it's a food allergy or intolerance, but individual and personal preferences don't really matter. At least not when there are several guests invited and not just 1 or 2 guests she hosts. You're the jerk. I've been a vegan for over 20 years. I wouldn't attempt to cook meat for someone. I wouldn't even know where to start. I'd order food with meat in it, or I would be fine with someone bringing a meat dish they prepared. Everyone has different comfort levels with meat and with vegan food. Not the jerk. Leave it to Reddit to crucify the guy who just doesn't want to eat vegan. Here's your problem, bud. You're trying to reason with a vegan. That's pretty much impossible to do. They don't get the vital nutrients their bodies need, so their brains don't work properly. Can't wait till this vegan fad goes away. It's nothing but overly privileged folks who don't have enough actual problems to complain about, so they just find more. I'd get together with the rest of your family and decide on someone else who doesn't insist on eating nothing but salad to host your dinner. Am I the jerk for misleading my cousin and destroying his marriage? There's some really weird drama in my family, and I feel like I'm going insane. So here's the background. My family is a little unusual. There are 3 of us adults, and we have 2 kids. We have me, my wife, and another woman best described as my wife's platonic life partner, and also my very dear friend. I'll call her Sally. Sally has lived with us for 20 years. The kids call her Ma. We live in a 4-bedroom house, and Sally and the kids each have their own rooms. Sally is aromantic and ace. She and my wife love each other very much, but platonically. Sally is like a sister to me. I cannot overstate how incredibly platonic her relationships with both of us have always been. We're all very happy together. I've been super glad we have her since we had the kids. Parenting is so much easier when you have a numbers advantage. My cousin, Dave, has been married to his wife, Mary, for something like 15 years. They have 2 kids. Dave talked Mary into opening the relationship about a year ago, and now they're getting divorced because he's struggling to find anyone willing to date him. Mary isn't, and he's incredibly upset about it, and it's destroying their relationship. And by it's, I kinda mean he's. He's jealous and resentful and making that her problem. And also now my problem, because he says it's my fault. According to him, he thought it would totally work great because my family makes open relationships look easy. What? Setting aside that Sally's relationships with both my wife and me are platonic, there's no open relationship in our household. Sally and I each get a weekly date night with my wife. I take the kids on her night, she takes them on mine. I did say parenting is easier with a numbers advantage. I think my wife and I have significantly more quality time together than we would if it was just the 2 of us. When the kids can't sleep, they go to Sally, so my wife and I are never disturbed after we go to bed. Sometimes Sally and I go to games together, and my wife takes the kids then because she's not into sports. No one in our house is dating anyone from outside of it. These are committed relationships that are, to all intents and purposes, exclusive. None of us have ever mentioned seeing anyone else. Even if we were, which again, we're not, I don't see how that would make me responsible for him treating Mary wrong because he's jealous. Somehow, he was apparently convinced that he and his beer gut would get all the girls, but no men would be interested in a charming, kind woman who keeps herself in reasonable shape and bakes the best cupcakes you will ever taste. I had dismissed this as out of my hand, but my aunt, his mother, and like 6 other family members agree that I'm the jerk and have been insisting I should apologize to my idiot cousin and help him talk Mary into closing the relationship and staying with him. I like Mary. We've been friends for 20 years and she's good people. Also friends with my wife and Sally and a wonderful aunt to my kids. Given the choice between her and Dave, I'd keep Mary in the family along with her kids. Someone in my family is insane here. Is it me or them? Who's the jerk? Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.